update, we'll call Detective Ryan Pillar.
Please state and spell your first and last name.
Ryan Pillar, R-Y-A-N, is all I-L-L-A.
Is your right hand, please? You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth. So help you God.
Detective, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Ryan Pillar, P-I-L-L-A-R.
Where do you work?
I work with the Gilbert Police Department and have been so employed since February of 2007, so a little over 18 years.
Back in 2019, where were you working? What area?
In 2019, I was assigned to our Criminal Investigations Division, specifically to our Violent Crimes Unit.
Can you tell us sort of over the years from when you started through current, where you have worked and when?
Yes, I started on police patrol, maintaining typical police patrol officer duties. In 2016, I went to our Special Victims Unit within our Criminal Investigations Division, which is the unit that is responsible for investigating crimes against children and sex-related crimes. In 2019 is then when I began my time with the Violent Crimes Unit, which is responsible for investigating crimes of violence, death investigations, things of that nature.
And where are you currently working?
In 2021, I moved back to patrol briefly, voluntarily, because I wanted to try something different. I'm currently assigned as a school resource officer still in Gilbert.
I want to talk and ask you a few questions about Gilbert Police Department back in 2019. At that time, did the Gilbert Police Department have a full staff of crime scene specialists to help process crime scenes?
We did not.
Did you have basically two people?
We had two individuals that were crime scene techs.
And because of that, as both patrol officers and detectives, were you trained on how to process crime scenes?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your training in that area?
Both my time on patrol and especially in my time with the Criminal Investigations Division, we received multiple hours of training when gathering evidence, everything from fingerprints to physical DNA. Although we were not crime scene technicians or specialists, we were trained on the basics of processing a crime scene. Everything from basically from photos to collecting physical evidence.
Okay. In 2019 and 2020, did the Gilbert Police Department contract with other police agencies to do forensic lab work?
Yes.
So, for instance, we just heard from DPS. Is that someone that the Gilbert Police Department worked with?
Yes, we work with Department of Public Safety, DPS, Mesa Police Forensics, Phoenix Police Forensics.
I want to talk to you about Wednesday, October 2nd of 2019. Were you on duty that day?
I was.
And were you called out to a home at 3875 East Phelps Road in Gilbert, Maricopa County, Arizona?
I was.
Do you recall what you were doing, like where you were prior to responding to that scene?
Yes, I do. I was actually in a meeting with our Violent Crimes Unit. We have weekly squad meetings. We were discussing cases that we were working when a sergeant came in and said, hey, we have a active shooting investigation and we need you to respond, which at that time myself and assisting detectives responded out to the 3875 East Phelps address.
Do you recall approximately when you got out there?
Yes, the time that we arrived on scene was approximately 10:30 in the morning. The originating call was approximately 09:13 hours, so little over an hour by the time we got on scene.
Can you describe the scene when you arrived?
Yes, when we arrived, I positioned my vehicle. So we have unmarked assigned police vehicles. I parked my car east of the target address of the 3875 Phelps address. The street was blocked off with patrol vehicles both on the east end of Phelps and west end of Phelps to prevent traffic from traveling down that roadway. Additionally, there was crime scene tape set up, yellow police tape, to both prevent any further persons entering or exiting the crime scene that was established by patrol officers, and a couple cones within the roadway that I later learned about.
So who were the other detectives that came or arrived on scene that morning?
The initial responding team was myself, Detective McDermott, Detective Biggs, and Detective Ferrer. We were the first 4 detectives on scene. Others later joined.
Okay. When you got on scene, do you recall being given any type of briefing or overview about what patrol had learned or established?
Yes, so typical response for detectives arriving on scene. The patrol officer, patrol sergeant will brief all the detectives once we arrive there. I do not recall specifically who briefed us that day, but we were provided with the names of the individuals involved, the address, the approximate time for the call for service, and a basic rundown from the initial interviews obtained from officers at that scene.
Did you at some point go to the driveway of 3875 East Phelps to look at the vehicle itself?
Yes.
When you were looking at that vehicle, did you see the damage to it?
Yes.
What do you recall seeing?
Well, upon walking up to the 3875 address, there was a black colored Tesla in the driveway. The front driver's side door was open, as well as the back driver's side door. There was glass partially on the driveway, as well as partially in the landscaping. While getting the scene walkthrough, which a walkthrough is when a patrol officer or the sergeant, again, I do not recall specifically who, but they will typically walk us through what they have at that point and explain what they've gathered so far. So this photograph that's on the screen now is accurate to what I initially saw, to include a up-close visual of the door. It's not the door frame, it's the vehicle frame that went above the driver's side window that was previously affixed to that vehicle.
Did you, well, let me ask you this. Have you seen vehicles that have been shot before?
Yes, yes I have.
You're familiar with what, you have seen bullet holes in cars before?
Yes.
I'm going to put up, that was Exhibit 25. We were talking about this as Exhibit 28. Did you see this damage to the Tesla?
I did see that damage, yes.
When you saw that, what did you believe that to be?
I believe that to be a bullet hole.
Was that consistent with other bullet holes you had previously seen in other vehicles?
Yes.
What about this made you believe it was a bullet hole?
Both the angle, the fact that it went through metal, there's up close, you can actually see some scraping that's along that metal edge. The cleanliness, if you will, of that damage is indicative of a fast-moving projectile.
Okay. The glass that was off to the side here that we see back in Exhibit 25, did you notice that when you came and walked around?
I did.
And a different photo, one sec. Put up Exhibit 24. Did you note glass still sort of along the edge of that door even?
There was door, yes, along that edge, and there was some within the cabin, which is not seen in this photograph, but yes.
So you observed glass pieces inside the car itself and sort of in that whole general area?
Multiple small shards from the glass being shattered, yes.
Now, you talked about some cones in the street. Let me put up Exhibit 14. Were these up when you arrived?
Yes, those cones were placed prior to my arrival and were in that position when on scene.
What did you understand those to be from?
I understood those to actually be locations where glass was located in the roadway, as well as to give some idea of where Mr. Boudreaux, who was later identified as our victim, described his vehicle approaching his driveway.
Okay. So approximately where he was when his car was shot?
Yes.
When you arrive on scene with different detectives, is everyone sort of given a duty,
Yes.
a role to play, so to speak? What was your role?
Once on scene, it was determined that I would be the lead detective, the case detective. The responsibilities of that include interviewing the victims and essentially overseeing the entire investigation from that moment forward. From there, it was decided to have my partner there, Detective McDermott, assist with the primary scene detective, essentially in charge of operating the crime scene management, since we did not have the crime scene technicians available at that time. And then Detective Ferrer and Detective Biggs were then assigned to assist him with both investigating the scene, collecting physical evidence, and they were also provided tasks later on.
So although you were not responsible for processing the scene, did you, for instance, look in this area to note any glass pieces?
Yes.
Maybe cones?
Yes.
And did you observe that?
Yes, I observed glass in that roadway.
Had you, as the case agent, been advised that the first officer on scene, Officer Robb, had done a brief interview of Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
Is that normal?
Yes.
As a case agent, did you then want to do a more in-depth interview with Mr. Boudreaux?
Yes, this is typical for any investigation. Of course, uniformed police officers will arrive. When they gather enough information to determine this is going to require some further investigation, they'll contact the Criminal Investigations Division. So Officer Robb did have the initial interview, albeit brief, and then she provided that information.
Now, we hear about body-worn camera. As a detective, did you have a body-worn camera?
I did not.
So when you decided to interview Brandon Boudreaux, did you record that?
I did record that.
How did you record that?
At that time, body-worn cameras were not as used as much as they are now. So I did not have the body-worn camera. However, it was common practice both in Special Victims Unit and specifically in Violent Crimes Unit on October 2nd of 2019 on this case to use a digital recorder, which is a simple digital recorder that has press play, record, stop. That's how I captured the audio.
When you arrived, do you recall where Brandon Boudreaux was?
I do.
Where was he?
So when I arrived, I was, again, we briefly walked through the scene. There were 3 males sitting on the north side of the street directly across from the 3875 Phelps address. On this particular day, it was pretty warm outside. October 2nd in Arizona, yes, it was warm. They were seated, in this photograph here, this is a good representation across the street. There were 3 males sitting there. I did not know who was who yet. But once I got the basic idea of the layout of our crime scene, I walked over and introduced myself.
So we have Exhibit 9 here. They show where you had contact with Brandon Boudreaux.
Yes.
So when you went over there, did you know at that time whether or not the other two individuals had been present during the shooting?
I did not.
Okay. Did you go over there and ask to find out who Brandon was, which one was, and if the other two knew anything about the case?
Yes, I tend to be a little more social, so I introduced myself, try to keep it lighthearted despite it being a serious situation. I confirmed, I believe the friends were Chris and a Mark, I don't know their last names. And then Brandon identified himself as being the resident at that house involved in this shooting. Once that was gathered, I asked the friends if they were there prior to or during the shooting, and they said no. They were simply there as support. After the incident, since Brandon contacted them, once that was gathered, those two friends remained in the shade while I walked with Brandon after he agreed with me to speak with me privately. And I chose to use my vehicle since it has air conditioning and it was away in a private space.
So if we're looking at Exhibit 9 here, where were you parked in relation on this photograph?
So my vehicle, where that squad car is at the end of the street, it would actually be even a little bit further to the east of that, so outside of that vehicle, and then it would be to the right. So it'd be kind of around the corner where your pen's at right there. It'd be in that area.
So when you took Brandon to your vehicle, that's where you interviewed him?
Correct.
And that was recorded?
That initial interview with us was recorded, yes.
When you are conducting an interview like this, how do you go about that?
Well, again, coming from SVU, or Special Victims Unit previously, I try to build a rapport phase, which is simply trying to keep it as lighthearted as possible and just discuss basic topics. I remember Brandon was mentioning that he was there with friends and they had some food that they were eating. I don't remember specifically what. But after some pleasantries, introduced myself. Hello, my name's Ryan Pillar. I'm a detective with the Gilbert Police Department once again. And then I obtained his specific identification information, have him spell his first name, last name, date of birth, phone number, any other phone numbers, email addresses, to get a foundation for who I'm speaking with and so I can communicate with them moving forward.
During this interview with Brandon Boudreaux, did you talk to him about who he thought might want to kill him?
Yes.
And did Brandon provide you with the names of some people he thought might want to kill him?
He did.
And what names did he provide to you?
He provided the names of Lori Vallow and the name of Alex Cox.
Did he advise you that there had been an incident that occurred in Chandler in July of 2019, and that was some of the reason for him identifying them?
Yes.
During your interview with Brandon, let me ask you this. Prior to talking with Brandon, when you were briefed, did you receive information regarding the vehicle that had been identified by Brandon as being used that was shot at him?
Yes, I was provided a description of the vehicle that shot at him, or where the shot came from.
When you spoke with Brandon in your car, was he consistent with giving you the same information?
Yes.
Did he describe the Jeep for you?
He did.
Did he provide you the information about what state the license plate was from?
Yes.
Did he talk to you about whether or not it had a rear tire on it?
He did.
Did he talk to you about where it was parked?
He did.
Did he talk to you about what he saw happen right before the shooting?
Yes.
Was anything that he had provided to you different than what you had learned in the briefing as to that area?
No.
We talked about that you had seen the vehicle, so you knew it was a Tesla. Did you ever talk to Brandon about whether or not his Tesla had cameras that might record what happened?
Yes, Teslas were fairly new at the time, but it was to my knowledge, that they had cameras throughout their body.
And was this a 2016 Tesla Model X?
Yes, it was.
Did you try to recover video from Brandon's Tesla?
Yes.
What were you able to?
Unfortunately, no. We were unable to obtain any of the video data in this vehicle, particularly because it did not have a storage device installed within it, which was also later confirmed by contacting Tesla directly. And there was no video saved from this event.
So you both looked yourself and then contacted Tesla to make sure that there was no other way that video would have been saved?
Correct.
Based upon what Brandon told you had occurred, did you expect to find a casing at the scene?
No, a shell casing, no.
Why not?
The way Brandon described the shooting was the back window of a Jeep opening up and then a weapon shooting at him, a firearm shooting at him. In my experience in law enforcement and utilizing firearms for many years, if it was a bolt action rifle, you would have to manipulate it and then the casing would come out within the vehicle. Or if it was a semi-automatic, the casing would still come out and be within that vehicle where it was fired from, based on the description that Mr. Boudreaux provided to me.
And did Mr. Boudreaux or Brandon provide or believe that this was a rifle that was barrel that was coming out the back window?
Yes, he believed it was a rifle. He as I've heard before, but specifically from him, he described it as a large barrel that came out of that window and fired at him.
And did he believe there was some sort of silencer or something on the end of that barrel?
He believed there may be a suppressor of some kind, but again, it's often that people, especially if a weapon's pointed at them, believe that it's very large. So I believed it was a rifle.
So he didn't see a hand or anything else or describe that to you, or you would have thought a handgun was put out the window and the casing might have ejected.
Correct.
He only saw the barrel of the rifle.
Correct.
Were you present when the fragments were collected or located in the Tesla?
I was not present when the fragments were located and extracted from the vehicle. I was present after my interview with Brandon, and I returned to where it was in the process of, and they had collected the fragments.
Did you see where they had been removed from?
Yes, there was an extensive period of time focused on that bullet hole and finding as much as we could.
Did you note that I'm going to put up exhibit 28 to help us, that sort of the molding had been damaged as a result of this projectile?
Yes.
And for this vehicle, we had seen in exhibit 25 that there's no sort of metal frame around the top of the glass window, correct?
Correct.
Was it your understanding then that the window kind of went up into this molding in the frame of the vehicle?
Yes.
In this case, did police try to look if there was any fragments anywhere else sort of in the frame of that vehicle around there?
Yes, it was explained to me, and I looked as well into the bullet hole itself, and a lot of that rubber casing that you see surrounding that was pulled away and removed and inspected further to find any further fragments of that projectile.
Now, in this case, did you also see originally the glass sort of on the driveway there where it landed, and then later was the glass sort of manipulated to be able to look at it better?
Yes.
I'm going to put up exhibit 46, for instance. So was the glass looked at, and even 47, and kind of spread out to be able to look at whether or not there was damage to it other than that the whole thing was shattered?
Yes, and where the A sticker, that was placed when I was in my interview, but that's where, yes, that's where they believed that the impact was, had connected with the glass that was within the frame of the Tesla.
And so there seemed to be a little divot there that seemed to match about the location that that window would have gone up there.
Yes.
Now, because only fragments of that projectile were recovered in the frame of this vehicle, did police search elsewhere to see if you could recover any other fragments?
Yes.
And can you tell us what was done to try to see if you could find those?
Well, aside from spending a couple hours on the Tesla itself looking for any fragment, which ultimately recovered 4 small fragments, we searched amongst the glass there, and then we started within the roadway where we could best determine the gunshot collided with Mr. Boudreaux's Tesla. We started there. Well, let me back up. We had additional detectives respond to our scene. By early afternoon, there was 14 detectives total, and they were assigned with canvassing the neighborhood and the route that Mr. Boudreaux provided as far as where he traveled after the shooting, as where the Jeep traveled after the shooting. We assigned detectives to canvass the entire neighborhood for any type of surveillance and contact any potential audible or visual witnesses. After that task was completed was when we did something called a line search. So it was not all 14 detectives at this point. I believe there was about 10 or 11 of us, where we stand, as it sounds, in a line, essentially shoulder to shoulder, and walk that roadway, the entire pathway where Mr. Boudreaux described where he drove, from the point of impact of the shooting, westbound on Phelps towards Cole. We then went northbound on Cole, passing Waite, which we'll get back there, but passing to the point where he said he stopped his vehicle near a park or pool, a community pool area. We really searched that part because that's where he said he turned his vehicle around. So we searched for any additional glass or fragments. We then proceeded to walk back down Cole, eastbound on Waite, continued our line search, and then ultimately southbound on Fisher, and then back westbound on Phelps, where we got back to those orange cones. So we did a line search, and despite our best efforts to include using a metal detector, no other fragments were located.
Seeing how small those fragments are, you're just trying to find something that might flash or stand out as you're looking on the asphalt. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised you didn't find anything?
Surprised, no. Disappointed, yes. But
It was a very long distance. You were looking for very small, tiny pieces of metal.
yes, and it was warmer as the day went on. So.
Now, you said that officers also contacted residents around that neighborhood to look for any surveillance cameras that might have caught anything.
Correct.
On Phelps, did anyone that was immediately around this area have any ring cameras or any other footage that would have showed this? That showed the street area where the Jeep was?
There was no video surveillance of the street area on Phelps.
Okay. During this investigation, did you ask Brandon for his phone?
Yes.
Why did you want his phone?
At this juncture, very early in the investigation, we don't know the complete motive. We don't know the involved parties. He's telling me a story, sure, that he provided some names, but to really know any possible motives or leads, people's smartphones have a lot of data, and he voluntarily turned that over He completed a consent form, which is what we do when we want to have somebody willingly consent to us searching their device, because it is quite intrusive. And he turned over his device, which was ultimately turned over to our digital forensics unit, which was explained a little bit ago, but specialized detectives who specialize in downloading these types of electronic devices and going through the data.
So you might be looking for text messages where he's threatening someone or someone's threatening him or whatever else.
Correct.
Did you find anything like that?
No.
Did you also take Brandon's Tesla to Gilbert property?
Yes, once we completed our line search, our canvas, it was decided to take the Tesla to the Gilbert Police Department's property and evidence building to go indoors, just take another look at it to see if we can find anything further.
So you're getting there at 10:30 in the morning. How long is this all going on when you finish with this line search and now you're deciding to try to take the Tesla back to look at it?
I don't have the exact time, but I would estimate we probably left the 3875 East Phelps address at approximately 4:30, maybe 5 in the afternoon, early evening.
Okay. So did you and others, again, spend more time trying to look through the Tesla to see if there was any other evidence, any other fragments or anything else that might be there?
We did.
Was anything else found?
Nothing else was found.
Did you return the car to Brandon?
Yes, the vehicle was not impounded. We turned it back over to him. That was his only vehicle. So once we made our final search of everything we could regarding that bullet hole and the surrounding areas within it, it was turned back over to Mr. Boudreaux.
During your interview with Brandon Boudreaux, he advised you of that incident that occurred in Chandler on July of 2019 involving Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. Did you reach out to the Chandler Police Department?
Yes.
And did you learn from the Chandler Police Department that Lori Vallow had a 2018 Jeep Wrangler with Texas plates LWD 0997 in her garage on that July 11th of 2019?
Yes.
Did you learn photographs had been taken?
Yes.
Were you provided with copies of those photographs?
I was.
When you learned that license plate, were you also able to run that and get information about the Jeep?
Yes, we did an MVD records check, which is a simple license plate check, which will provide the registered owner and their information and vehicle information.
So by October 9th, you had the license plate number and VIN for that Jeep.
Yes.
Now, as a case agent, are you the person who is responsible for interacting with the listed victim in a case?
Yes.
And was it your common practice to give out your work number to any victim so they could reach you?
Yes, both this case and any case I worked, I would regularly give out my direct work cell phone number, my name. I encourage them to text me and call me as needed, with the caveat that I'm not always available, but if you leave me a message, I will respond.
So as a detective, you actually are provided a work cell phone for that purpose?
Yes, ma'am.
And all of their detectives are given the same sort of thing, a work cell phone, so that victims and witnesses can reach them?
Yes.
On October 14th of 2019, did you learn from Brandon that Melanie was moving to Idaho?
Yes.
Were you able to confirm that with her?
Yes.
Did you learn during this investigation that Lori Vallow had moved to Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes.
Did you learn in this investigation that Alex Cox had moved to Idaho?
Yes.
So in October then, Melanie joined them in Idaho?
Yes.
On October 16th, did you learn that a license plate reader had recorded Lori Vallow's Jeep with that Texas plate LWD 0997 on the I-40 on October 1st of 2019?
Yes.
Was that reader located in Holbrook? Arizona.
Yes.
How long before the shooting of Brandon was Lori Vallow's Jeep seen on that I-40 heading towards Phoenix?
That Jeep was seen on the I-40 heading towards Phoenix approximately 26 hours and 30 minutes prior to the shooting at Brandon Boudreaux. In particular, the LPR, the license plate reader, has cameras. This was a DPS camera, if I recall correctly. Took a picture of the Jeep Wrangler with the Texas license plate LWD-0997. And there was no wheel affixed to the back of the Jeep Wrangler, which Jeep Wranglers are typically have that wheel affixed to the back of them. In this image, 26 hours prior to the shooting, the wheel was not affixed to the back of that Jeep.
When you were working this case, you had talked about other detectives. Did you continue to work with some of them to help you investigate this case?
Yes.
Were you working with Detective McDermott during this case?
Yes.
And as this investigation continued on October 31st of 2019, did you learn of LPR hits of that Jeep in Idaho?
Yes.
And did you then work with Detective McDermott to try to seek help from law enforcement in Idaho to seize Lori Vallow's 2018 Jeep Wrangler with that Texas plate LWD-0997?
Yes.
On November 4th of 2019, did you learn that a detective at Hermosillo with the Rexburg Police Department had located and impounded that Jeep?
Yes.
Once that Jeep was impounded, what did you decide to do?
Well, I learned on November 4th, Detective Hermosillo with the Rexburg Police Department and fellow detectives located the Jeep. They impounded it in their private police lot. And once it was known to be secure in the Jeep that we were looking for, I drafted a search warrant and worked with Detective Hermosillo to arrange processing of that Jeep. Because that Jeep was associated with the crime in Gilbert, Arizona, arrangements were made to ultimately travel up there, up to Rexburg, Idaho, rather, and process that Jeep for physical evidence.
We heard from Detective Olzak. Did he go with you, for instance, up there?
Detective Olzak was accompanying me, yes, up to Rexburg, Idaho.
And did a crime scene specialist, Tammy Lashik, also go with you up there?
Yes.
When you were going up there, were you processing the vehicle to obtain gunshot residue?
Yes.
Were you processing the vehicle to obtain DNA?
Yes.
Were you processing the vehicle to obtain fingerprints?
Yes.
We heard, obviously, to remove the infotainment system. Were you also looking for any casings, projectiles, anything like that that might relate to your crime?
Any physical evidence within that vehicle, yes.
What is gunshot residue?
Gunshot residue, short is GSR, is small particulates that are exerted from a firearm when it is discharged. So when you shoot a gun, these small particulates go out. They can go up to 5 feet, is what I've been told. I am not a GSR expert. However, they do go out in a, best way I can describe it, a smoke-like explosion fashion. And they can both go on clothing, hands, and surrounding areas, depending upon how small the physical environment is.
So in this case, well, let me ask you first, have you collected GSR yourself before?
I have collected GSR before.
Can you describe for us what you use to collect GSR?
Both GSR and any physical evidence, you wear gloves. You will be changing, usually have one primary pair of gloves on, and then you will have a secondary pair of gloves you put on. That secondary pair of gloves is removed every time you go to process another location or collect another evidence item. In other words, you're using a lot of protective gloves while processing a scene. With GSR in particular, you're going to have a controlled vial and a sample vial. The controlled vial is not opened. It is next to the sample vial. That is just to give the lab a controlled example of the same type of material that has not been utilized. The sample vial is sealed. Once it is open, it's cylindrical. It's about the size of a shotgun shell is the best way I can describe it. Once it is unsealed, it has a circular adhesive. That adhesive is then pressed against the area in which you are collecting where you believe gunshot residue might exist. Once that's collected, you reseal it with that adhesive into the tube, and then it is sealed with an integrity seal to prevent any tampering before any type of lab analysis.
And for the vehicle, this Jeep, were you then using that process inside the rear area of the Jeep?
That process was being used at the interior of that Jeep, yes.
And was that because you had been advised that there was someone inside the vehicle when the rifle was fired?
Correct.
We said that DNA was collected also in this vehicle. Have you ever collected DNA from a scene?
I have.
Can you tell us how that is done?
Similar, same process with the gloves, removing them from each location and putting a new pair on. There are essentially long Q-tips, wooden, and then they have the Q-tip at the end. There's 2 Q-tips in each paper vessel, keeping the integrity of them. And there's going to be a sterilized water that you also open and crack open, so you have sterile water. You open the Q-tips, as I'll refer to them as. You put water on one of the ends and leave the other one dry. You will first use the wet Q-tip to swab the area in which you are collecting DNA. You will then use the dry Q-tip to swab that same location. You place both of those Q-tips into a cardboard box. The reason why it's cardboard is so it can breathe, so that doesn't get moldy and affect the integrity of the sample you collected. That box, again, is sealed with integrity seals and signed to prevent any tampering prior to any type of lab analysis.
And then lastly, just before we break, you also talked about collecting fingerprints. Have you collected fingerprints before?
I have.
And can you tell us how that is done on a vehicle?
Much simpler. There's graphite powder. You dust it amongst the surface, a flat surface where you believe the fingerprints may exist. That graphite powder will show the existence of fingerprints. You will then use specialized tape, but honestly, it's just clear tape. You press it on there, pick it up, and you place it on a white piece of paper, more or less. It's kind of a cardboard type paper, like a thick paper. And that's how you collect your fingerprints.
All right, let's recess for the weekend.